Welcome to Podsongs, where we interview inspirational people in service to others as inspiration for a new song. Today's guest is Dr. Gerald Pollack, Professor of Bioengineering at the University of Washington and a leading authority in the field of water structuring. You don't do the kind of research that pharmaceuticals can sell. Who invests in it? Because it's water everywhere. It's kind of the benefit for humanity, and that's not the kind of research investment that the big business is interested in.
No, it's not. In general, what we do is fundamental research, and the only real money for fundamental research is government agencies. But government agencies don't particularly relish ideas that run against the mainstream, seriously against the mainstream. And so getting money is a challenge. There are some generous people who've done well in their lives and want to give back. And we've been supported by those for the past several years. Unfortunately, of the two, one has basically changed their direction, and we don't fit, although they've been very generous to us. And the other one is suffering some difficult economic issues, and so we're once again on the lookout, because without the funding, it's impossible to carry forth fundamental research. Yeah, if we were designing a drug, it would be easier, but we don't do that.
Because I remember hearing you a long time ago on Bulletproof podcast, Dave Asprey's podcast.
Yeah.
And easy water was because it has the health benefits, but also has the energy aspect. It has, I mean, where do you start, really? It's so many benefits to everyone.
Well, I must admit, I agree with you. It has so much potential because it's at the fundament of science, the different phases of water that exist. And what we identified, I hesitate to say the word discovered, because there are people, 100 years ago who were suggesting that water has another phase that's unrecognized. And that general idea was amplified by several prominent scientists over the past 100 years, shall we say, including Albert St. Georgi, who is recognized as the father of modern biochemistry, won a Nobel Prize for discovering vitamin C. Gilbert Ling, who perhaps contributed as much as anybody to the idea that inside your body, my body, the water is not like liquid water. The water consists of water molecules that are aligned or stacked or ordered. We like to call it structured water. And on the shoulders of those giants is where we stand. And we were lucky enough to have at the time to have the funding, the personnel, the group of creative people to exploit those findings and learn a whole lot more about this so-called structured water, which we now call four-phase water, or exclusion zone water, which again is shortened to EZ, exclusion zone, which works well in the US, but not all countries, because sometimes EZ is easy to remember, but none of it's EZ. So we learned to that problem. At any rate, that's basically what we found. And there are, in fact, practical applications, and we have been working on some of those practical applications, but they need to be done outside the university setting, because the university is not a company, and in order to retain its tax-free status, it can't engage the company activities, but it can partner with scientists to write patents, and then the patents are licensed to people who want to develop them. And so there is a measure of that. And with easy water or phase water, there are multiple applications, and we have been pursuing some of those to a limited extent, but that's outside the scope of the university. The university is not permitted to become a business in that way.
Because if you did one product, desalination or water purifying, that that.
Yeah, all of that. Well, we've been thinking of those, and we're into those, but not in a really major way that can make leaps in technology. There's always that so-called valley of death. You have an observation in the laboratory, it works great, and then you have to, in order to make it or create an entity that has worldwide practicality, you have to cross over that deep valley, so-called valley of death, to get to the other side, and most don't make it.
So it's a genuine phenomenon in academia.
Well, or beyond academia, in any endeavor, if you have an idea, it seems to work well in a limited setting, like a laboratory, and out of that, you want to create something that has benefit for the world, and certainly we do. The ones you mentioned exactly are two of them. Desalination is one. Desalination without the need to use any energy beyond the energy of the sun. Desalination. Filtration is another. Getting electrical energy from the sun and water is yet another. And there are others. So there are practical benefits. But
you're very generous in your book, and also in your many interviews, with giving credit to, because you're part of a big team. You have many students and postgraduates, people. They did all these micro discoveries throughout the way. So perhaps one of them is going along and starting up something.
Well, yeah. Actually, one of them did and started a company, and reassured me that he would do everything. We should do it together, and it wouldn't require any of my time. Didn't exactly turn out that way. I need to go into more detail.
No, but it's clear there's many applications, but
many.
So maybe for people that, because I've been researching it, but for the people that don't know, I mean, it's the fourth phase of water is like a gel substance.
Yeah, let me explain. So it can form in many ways. It starts from water and forms out of ordinary liquid water, like what you've just been drinking, and I should be drinking more of. Okay, and I have my supply.
Yeah, there you go.
Here.
Cheers,
yeah.
cheers.
Yeah. So if you take a body of water, and into this body of water you immerse some material, and if the surface of this material is hydrophilic, that is water loving. So in other words, if you droplet of water spreads out, it means the surface is hydrophilic, and if it beads up, it means it's hydrophobic. It fears water. Water wants to, the surface and water don't want to interact at all. So if it's hydrophilic, in most cases, not every case, when the water meets the surface, what happens is the first molecular layer undergoes a change, a radical change, and what was initially a bunch of individual water molecules, randomly oriented, bouncing around a fierce number of times per second, gradually forms this honeycomb array. And so if you were look at that first molecular layer, it looks like hexagons, series of hexagons. Okay. That first layer then acts as a template for the creation of the second layer, which will be from water, the same as the first layer, and the third layer, and so on. And they keep building layer by layer. and we've seen stacking as large as on the order of a million layers. So this is no
How high would that be
on the order
in
of a
millimeters?
millimeter. We can
1 millimeter.
Yeah, we can easily see 1 millimeter. We see just shy of that on an everyday basis.
Is that the surface tension on so when you fill a glass of water over the top, you see the bubble, it goes over the top. Is there?
Yes.
Is that surface tension? Is that easy water?
Well, that is certainly related to easy water. Surface tension is a rather it's not ill-defined, but not well understood. Something happens at the boundary between the water and the air, and we have studied that. And to some extent, the surface is indeed, as you say, filled with easy water. It's a bit more complicated than that, but yes, the answer to the question is the two of them are closely related. So if I have a container of water, there will be surface tension at the top. And, water is known to have a high surface tension, and part of the reason is indeed that easy layer that forms at the top. So that is a part of it, yeah. But it forms it forms the most fundamental way in which it forms is the one that I described next to a surface that happens to be hydrophilic, and most are. So there are dozens of examples that we've seen and recorded over the years of types of surface that nucleate the buildup of this easy water. So the easy water is different from liquid water, and we call it a fourth phase. We also call it exclusion zone because the water excludes. It excludes almost everything, the test that we've done. And it excludes because it's a very tight lattice, as you can imagine. These hexagons are extremely small. You don't let anything through, practically anything through. And when you apply one sheet and another sheet, and each sheet is slightly offset from the first, we found then almost nothing gets in. And so we refer to it as exclusion zone, or easy for short, easy to remember, because it excludes these substances. Another characteristic is that it needs energy to build, and the energy, when you go from chaos, which is liquid water, to order, which is this easy fourth phase water, you need to put energy in. It's kind of like your office. It looks pretty neat where you are right now, but I can bet you that over a period of a week or two, if you didn't do anything, it would be a mess. And then, so it's easy to create randomness, but if you want to get it back into shape the way it is now, you need to spend some time, energy, and effort. Energy is required in order to create order. This is typical, well-known principle of thermodynamics. One of the principles that, to me, makes sense. Not all do. And so, in order to create this ordered, structured, easy water, four-phase water, you need energy. And we found that the energy comes basically from the sun. It's infrared energy. So, the sun's energy, the electromagnetic spectrum that comes from the sun, consists of a wide range of wavelengths, and a narrow region of those wavelengths is what we call visible light, and slightly longer wavelengths, infrared light, and slightly shorter wavelengths, ultraviolet light. And we found that infrared light is the key. That's what builds easy water. It's almost the equivalent of heat. Not quite, but essentially it's heat. So when the sun imparts its energy, some of which reaches the earth, it does so not only in terms of visible light, but also heat. You can feel the heat. And some 50% or so of this energy is in the form of heat, or infrared energy. So the energy required for building this kind of water is all around us. It's not just the sun, actually. It's also anything that absorbs the sun's energy and then later re-radiates it. So in, in, in your office, if you were to turn off all the lights and your video camera records black, nothing. If your camera, videographer, whatever, were to substitute a camera with an infrared sensor, then beautiful image of you, even in complete darkness, because you're generating infrared. The microphone is, the picture on the back wall, the stairway, the plant, everything is generating infrared energy. And so you get a beautiful image. And that's why it's used for the military as a night light, because it can pick up images, because the infrared energy that's picked up by this instrument is all over the place. And so because it's all over the place, there's plenty of it available to build easy water. So that's another characteristic. To build it, you need this kind of energy, but the energy is always there. So you've got a lot of it. Finally, one more feature. Maybe this is one of the more interesting. This water is not neutral. So ordinary H2O is neutral. But this water typically is negatively charged. And so as these layers begin building, each layer contains negative charge, which means it's not H2O anymore, because H2O is neutral. Actually, it's H3O2. So you've got layers of H3O2 building up, and infrared energy is responsible, and H3O2 is negatively charged. And the region beyond these layers, just ordinary water, has the equivalent positive charge. So in other words, you're starting in terms of the raw material, you start with water. The water is broken up into H plus, OH minus. That gives H2O. The OH minuses gather together to form this EZ water. And the H pluses get cast into the wilderness, just beyond these EZ layers. So you've got negative EZ, positive region beyond. You stick two electrodes in, negative and positive, you can light a light bulb. And we demonstrated this in the laboratory. So this has got, a lot of practical potential. Imagine if you get practically unlimited electrical energy coming from the sunlight and the water. That's all, completely renewable. Yeah, it's totally fascinating. So those are anyway some of the more practical, or I shouldn't say practical, they include practical, but some of the more fundamental aspects of easy water, fourth phase water. And it builds, as I said, mostly when you've got that energy, infrared, which is practically always there. But also there are other instances, like we were mentioning, that the air-water interface is one of them. Another one is if you stick electrodes in water and pass current, near that negatively charged electrode, negatively charged easy water will grow. So even passing charge into water can be sufficient for growth of EZ. And there may be other means that we have yet to discover. So it's all so exciting.
Yeah. So just to be clear, so I can have a glass of water, and I can have a glass of ice, and I could get a glass of steam briefly. But can you have a glass of easy water, or is it limited in its size?
We don't know what that limit is. We know that your glass of water can contain some easy water, and probably does, because there are several ways that, first of all, you've got infrared energy coming in, not from along the environment, but your fingers are generating infrared energy. And we found that in experiments that the amount of easy water is kind of self-limiting. That is, suppose you have in your glass of water a kind of region where easy water begins to grow. As it grows, negative charge, it will release positive charges all around it. And we found when those positive charges get too concentrated, easy stops growing. So it's self-limiting. If you can get rid of those protons, those positive charges, somehow the easy water will grow even more. So we understand that. And right now, it's difficult to imagine that your glass of water is filled with easy water, but good chance that it's got a certain fraction. If it were filled with easy water is more viscous. It's kind of like honey. Your entire water would turn into a kind of viscous blob, wouldn't easily be able to drink. So yes.
But if you were going to make a battery, with all the filament dividing sections and with what did you call it? The substance that repels water, the opposite to the Teflon. And,
hydrophilic.
Hydrophilic.
Hydrophilic loves water. Hydrophobic fears it, hates it.
Hydrophilic. Then the easy water could grow on the hydrophilic layers.
And that's what happens.
Making a battery.
Yeah, that's right. Making a battery. Yeah. It also, same thing happens in your cells. Your cells are filled with solids, mostly roughly 70% protein. And on the surface of the protein, most of the surface is charged or hydrophilic. And so those surfaces are perfectly arranged, designed, whatever you want to call it, to grow easy water. And for that reason, your cell is filled with easy water. Yeah. And so, but
what about some of the health benefits then? Because I remember when you were on Dave Asprey's show, you were talking about taking easy water in you. How would you do that, and what would be the benefits?
You can take easy. Well. First of all, let me back up a bit. Easy water fills every cell in your body, and the water is actually easy water, which is the water mostly filling your cells, is involved in practically every significant activity of the cell. So if you're a muscle cell, for example, the water, it's easy water, is integrally involved in the mechanism of contraction of the muscle. We studied muscle for several decades, and I know this field reasonably well. And the general consensus in the field is that water is irrelevant. It plays no role. And in general, most of the models of muscle contraction that have arisen, the concepts, consider muscle practically working in a vacuum. The water is irrelevant. It's like bath that bathes the more important water, the more important entities or ingredients in the process. That's a little hard to swallow. I mean, it's easy because that's the trend. But when you think that you're 2/3 water, and that water is playing no role in anything. So
more than that in terms of molecules, is it 99%?
Absolutely, yeah. Many people don't quite get that. But if you line up all the molecules in your muscle cell or any cell, and you start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, more than 99 out of 100 are going to be water molecules. And you can understand, it's just the arithmetic, that the molecule is so small that to make up that 2/3 volume, you need to, it requires a lot of water molecules. So if you think that 99 out of 100 of your molecules don't do anything, just basically sit there like the bath in which you bathe, that doesn't make sense. But this is the current belief system. It's not only in muscle cells, but essentially all cells. The water is considered to be no more than a background carrier of the more important molecules of life. And I believe the evidence disputes that, absolutely. And this is described in in my first book about water, it's called Cells, Gels, and the Engines of Life. The second book is the one that describes more of the properties of the water. That's called The Fourth Phase of Water, and that's the one that has become very popular of late. And and so the water is really important, and therefore, if you don't have a full complement of water, it's like missing some of your proteins or missing some critical ingredient. Your cell can't work properly if it's deficient. Sometimes we refer to that as dehydration because effectively the easy water hydrates your cell, and that's what hydration is all about. So what happens is, in the simplest case, is that you take in water. Some of that water gets peed out. Other of the water gets absorbed, and as it gets absorbed, because of the infrared energy from outside, and of course from inside, because you're metabolizing, metabolism generates heat. The heat is used to build easy water, and therefore your cells, when they're working properly, should be filled with easy water. And if they are, and everything else is working fine, your cells should work fine. If you've played 2 matches of tennis and you're dehydrated, I think you do play 2 matches of tennis per day. You look quite athletic. You sit down and you drink a couple liters of water and you're back in shape again. The water is absolutely critical, and not just for the operation of your muscle cells, but all cells, nerve cells, secretory cells that can't secrete properly unless they've got a full complement of easy water. Nerve cells can't transmit information properly unless they've got a full complement of easy water, et cetera, et cetera. That was the main argument of that first book, Cells, Gels, and the Engines of Life. And so to keep healthy, very simple paradigm, at least one aspect of remaining healthy, is to make sure that you've got enough hydration, that you've got enough water. And so there are at least a half dozen ways to do that. They're all fairly simple. I can't remember what I mentioned in the interview with Dave Asprey, but I can tell you, I can run down quickly because they're easy. The first is, if you'd like me to, I'm happy to.
Sure, yeah. Health tips.
Yeah. First, drink a lot of water. That's the first.
Gotcha.
Sort of obvious. The second one is drink the right kind of water, because if you can drink water that contains a lot of EZ, you've bypassed one step. That is turning ordinary H2O into, there you go.
Okay. I always drink from a blue bottle. I don't know if you've ever done experiments with color effect of color.
They're undergoing right now with a woman in the lab who hails from India, and her grandfather used colored bottles, green, blue, other ones, set them out in the sun. And after they were out in the sun for at least one day, you could drink them, especially if you were ill. Still, she doesn't recall, and I don't know which color is best for which illness, but she remembers that whenever she was sick, she would drink that water and she would get better. So we're looking into that right now. And
okay, great. So
far, preliminary evidence, you put it out in the sun, put the water out in the sun, and if it's not been in the sun, it contains no easy water. If it's been in the sun for at least a day or so, it contains easy water because we can actually measure it in a simple way.
I always just leave it out for 20 minutes, and for external use, leave it out for longer.
I can't comment on that. We don't have enough information, but we're studying it. It has a lot of practical consequence because if you drink the right water versus the wrong water, I mean, having no easy, but beyond that, as you know, full of pharmaceuticals, chemicals, pollutants, all kinds of junk.
I think the water's happiest in the dark blue. If you look at the oceans when they're in their deepest and they're still the most powerful. They're a deep blue. So
They're a deep blue and almost black. They're if they're really deep. They look dark, but if you look at the headwaters of rivers, and I think you've done it, the color is different. The headwaters of rivers just after the ice melt tend to be green. Um, I've seen that.
yeah.
You've seen, and I've seen it too in several places, and I've seen it, for example, uh, in Austria, just beneath the as the ice melts,
Because you
the
see it
waters.
against the whites quite well, you know.
Oh, against the whites, yeah, but even
The,
even without the whites, Innsbruck is an example. Right here, downtown Innsbruck, the river is running. It's running rapidly, and the usual explanation is, well, there must be some minerals in the water, but you need an endless supply of minerals to explain this. So, and it looks as though the color is deep. It kind of runs through the water. So we found, I think the answer is that it has to do with the fluorescence of easy water. We found and published that easy water fluoresces. The color of the fluorescence depends on the light that's coming in from the outside. So um, now we also found that um, when ice turns into water, when it melts, it doesn't turn directly into water. It goes through an EZ phase. So the structure of EZ, the hexagonal structure, is not too different from the structure of ice. It's different, but it's not too different. And we found experimentally that if you want to melt water, you start with ice, and then the ice converts to EZ water, which then converts to ordinary water. And the reverse is true as well. If you want to freeze water, you must first take the water and it must go into its EZ state, and the EZ state then turns into ice. You see, so EZ is a necessary intermediate between ice and water. Therefore, what you're looking at in the headwaters of the rivers is the beginnings of ice melt. And we know that the easy water that is the beginning of ice melt fluoresces. And so I think the reason that in Innsbruck and other places where the waters have just barely melted should be green or blue-green or something. And the same thing is true, perhaps you've noticed on your vacations or you're right nearby, some of the tropical waters. Sometimes they look bluish, greenish, light blue, green. They look heavenly. They look as though all you want to do is jump in. It's wonderful. Why is that? Well, same explanation. Similar explanation. These waters are warm. Warm waters contain huge numbers of single-celled organisms. Could be bacteria and algae, whatever, and these grow. And their cells, and inside these cells is easy water. And not only inside the cells, but also right outside the cells. You've got blobs of easy water throughout, simply because it's warm and because these grow. And the easy water, as I said, fluoresces. And it depends on the nature of the incident light as to what color it will be. So you've seen images or in person of some of these luscious colors, which do range typically in the blue and the greens, violets. And I think it's simply because these waters contain abundant easy waters. Okay, so we're deviating from the question. The question is, well, what can you do to build easy water to optimize your health? And one of them is drink a lot of water, and the second is to drink water that does contain easy water. And so there was a group in Central Asia called the Hunza. Some of you may know. It was studied by several people 50, 75 years ago, including I forget his name, Nobel laureate in the field of fluids, found that the Hunza people drank this kind of special water from ice melt, and still people go there and they live. They produce babies at age 100. They live 120 years, and they're healthy throughout their lifetime, unlike the rest of us. And
children at 100.
Children after 100, right?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, children, absolutely. Uh, Perhaps it's an apocryphal story, but I know that the people who have studied the Hunzi know that they're unusually healthy and they live very long lives, healthy. So
where is it?
right somewhere in Asia. I'm pretty sure it's Central Asia somewhere. I'm picturing the map somewhere southwest of China. But if you check the Hunza, Hunza, you'll find out immediately on the internet.
Okay.
I've not been there. And there are other cultures where the water is known to be high quality and people live longer there. So it's not just the Hunza, but the Hunza, I believe,
it says the mountainous valley in the Jilijat Balitsan region of Pakistan.
Pakistan. Okay, I see. Yeah, well, I was right, southwest, but it's pretty far southwest. Yeah, okay. Well, now we know how to keep healthy. So that's another one. Let me think. And the best way to do this, or a good way to do this, is to get the juice from plants, so-called juicing. So you take something growing in your backyard and you squeeze it to death, take the green leaves and squeeze them. And what you're doing is squeezing out the water from inside the cells of these freshly growing plants, healthy plants. And the water inside the cell is essentially the same as the water inside our cell, full of easy water. So if you drink that, you're drinking easy water. So that's a second way of ensuring good health. A third way, let's see if I can remember them all. A third way is to trying to think of which one to mention next. Okay, third way is to eat various herbs and spices, and so we've known it's been known, I should say, since Ayurvedic times, 5,000-6,000 years ago, and ancient China also, that there are some foods or spices or herbs that are generally good for health. And it was passed down over the generations that if you got X illness, you should try X food. And some of these foods, I learned, are good for practically everything, like turmeric. So question arises, they've been doing this for, many thousands of years, and it seems it works. So what is it about turmeric that's so special? Does turmeric have 30 different receptor sites all around the body to take care of any ill that might afflict you, ranging from a headache to a head to toe issues? Or is it only one mechanism that operates in all of those places? By virtue of Occam's razor, the simplest principle is likely to be the one that's correct. We started thinking, well, gee, the only substance that operates throughout your body that we can think of is water. And so is it possible that turmeric has an effect on the water? We did the experiment, we published it, and we found that in amounts that you would expect to have it in your body, turmeric builds easy water. So, in other words, if you take turmeric as a spice with your food, it builds easy water, and presumably the easy water builds in the regions of your body where it's needed. And so whether your problem arises in your head or your toes or somewhere in between, taking turmeric should be a good idea At least we think we understand the molecular basis. And apparently it is a good idea. In the same publication, we studied other substances known to be good for health. Basil is another one used by in the Ayurvedic culture, holy basil, so-called. It does the same thing. We also tried aspirin in that study. Aspirin is a natural product coming from the bark of the willow tree. Same thing. And later we studied ghee, clarified butter, also used by those ancients. In fact, we could take ghee, we put a cylinder of it put it in the refrigerator, make a little cylinder of it, and see what happens next to that cylinder. And so the cylinder is like a hydrophilic substance that we put in water, and we can see the easy grow each time, not quite a millimeter, but not so far from a millimeter. So that's been our prize winner so far is ghee. And ghee has been used by the ancients.
Oh yeah,
and speaking of
wonder food.
It's wonderful. And
Yeah.
and you mentioned Dave Asprey. He knows it. He's known it. He learned it from when he was in Asia as well, getting healed by monks. And so that's a third way. Fourth way is going out in the sun. So we here in the Northwest U.S. in the wintertime, we don't get a lot of sun, unfortunately. And when the sun does come out, everybody's got smiles on their faces. And it's like coming out of a pandemic or something like that. Coming out of a constant cloud coverage, the sun peeks out and smiles. Why is that? Well, so many people will view this as a manifestation of some kind of psychology. It's been dark and suddenly the sky lights up. And that's certainly possible. But there's another possibility. The sun contains infrared energy. Infrared energy penetrates our body, particularly our head, into our brain. And indeed, some wavelengths do penetrate very well. And the cells inside our brain get refilled with easy water. And we revert to our default situation, which is being happy, pleased, not unhappy or depressed. Feel good when the sun comes out. So that's another explanation. And the fourth one is a kind of extreme of that, and one I like a whole lot, and that's going and bathing yourself in a sauna. I, of course, had the experience myself, both in Finland. I think maybe Finland is the origin of the sauna. They pronounce it sauna. We say sauna, but same thing. And also in Russia, where they call it banya. And in both cases, my experiences have been just marvelous. And I remember in Finland, I remember my experience. I lived it a few times, and it was actually above the Arctic Circle, and there was a conference there. The conference was on light, good place, where it remains light.
In the summer or the winter?
I'm sorry?
You were there in the summer or the winter?
I was there in the summertime. Yeah, and I do remember it doesn't get dark up there. And it's quite an experience, not getting dark. But it's a perfect place to hold a conference like that. So I also remember going there, and I was jet lagged, of course, having just arrived, gave my talk, and the evening was a party. So they took us to some remote location near a lake, and there was great food and socializing, and dancing, and what have you. And it was about 10 p.m., and I was really tired. All I wanted to do was to go back to my hotel and get in bed and sleep for 10 hours. So finally, I'm waiting and waiting and waiting for that to happen. And the leader of the conference gets up at the microphone, and I was sure he was going to say, okay, the buses are loading. It's time to go back. He didn't say that. He said, okay, the saunas are now open. It's time to go and enjoy them. And I thought, oh, shit, this is not what I wanted. And I just want to go sleep. I thought, let's give it a try. So I went into one of the three that they were describing. One is dry, one is moist. I forget what the other one is. And almost everybody else also goes to enjoy them. The one was for women, men. I don't remember all details,
This was
but I
in the
do
good old
remember that
pre-COVID days.
it was in the pre-COVID. It was 4 or 5 years ago. That's right. And I remember getting out, and I got out, took a shower, got dressed, and it felt as though I'd had at least 8 hours of sleep. I was raring to go. And going back to the hotel didn't appeal to me one bit. I was enjoying myself tremendously. So anyway, I've had similar experiences in Russia where they beat you afterward with leaves from which tree is it?
Eucalyptus?
No. You Australians think everything is eucalyptus, but it wasn't. And central Russia, and it was birch trees. They're full of birch trees, and being asked initially, do you have a heart problem? No, no heart problem. So we go through the business, the sauna, then the birch leaves are dipped into cold water, and you're hit on the back with the cold water from the leaves of the birch tree. Anyway, it works. So anyway, what is all this? Well, why am I relating all of this to you? It's because sauna means heat. And heat is essentially the same as infrared. And you get blasted by all of this infrared energy, and it can't help but build easy water throughout your body, especially without clothing. It's even better because it doesn't have to pass through your clothing. And with the buildup of easy water, your cells are working optimally, and you feel great. And so it's as simple as that. Okay, I think I've gone through 4 of them or 5 of them, but there's another one that I'd like to mention, and that is grounding, or perhaps you call it earthing, connecting yourself electrically to the earth. This sounds awfully weird to those who never heard about it, but it's just what you do. If, for example, you go to Bondi Beach or wherever you like to go, you take your shoes off and you walk near the water. You walk along the water barefoot. You're connecting yourself electrically to the earth. And why is that important? Well, I got to tell you, I could never imagine why it was important, why it felt good. I started my career studying electrical engineering. And so I thought I knew something about the field, and not one professor in 4 years ever told me that if you take a plug and plug it into the wall receptacle, that third prong, in our case it's round, I'm not sure, in your case it goes to ground. Ground is zero. No professor ever told me that it was anything but neutral. Therefore, the earth is neutral. You're connecting to a vast sea of neutrality, of zero, a great big fat zero. And then about 10 years ago, I had a Russian guy in the lab, a knowledgeable guy, and he was just about to depart back home that evening. His flight was leaving from Moscow, and he started telling me about the electric field of the earth. And I said, Andre, what are you talking about? You must mean the magnetic field of the earth. I never heard of an electric field of the earth. He said, no, you never did. Don't you know that the ionosphere up there is negatively charged, and the earth is positively charged, and the earth is negatively charged? And between those two terminals, like a capacitor, you have an electric field running perpendicular to the surface of the earth, running up and down. This is the earth's surface, and the earth is negative. I said, Andre, you must be on some kind of drug. I never heard of such a thing. And And he said, well, it's a funny thing. I'm not on a drug, but, in Russia, every middle school student knows that the earth is negatively charged. And my head was swimming. I just couldn't imagine this. So I went home. I had difficulty sleeping that night. Could this really be true? Because if it's true, it changes so many things. And next morning, came to my office, and I was greeted by a student who, a diligent and intelligent student who likes to read, and he brings me the lectures of the famous, more than famous, Richard Feynman, famous Nobel physicist who many scientists considered to be the Einstein of the second half of the last century, revered. Anyway, he gave a lot of lectures. Someone recorded his lectures and made books out of them. So you can read now. There are 3 volumes of the Feynman lectures. Volume 2, Chapter 9, is all about the negative charge of the Earth. And when the student showed me, made a Xerox copy, I read through. It was clear that there was lots of evidence that the Earth has negative charge. It's essentially an infinite source of negative charge. And boy, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I couldn't.
But nobody else discusses that. It was one of the lost in the annals somehow.
It's lost in the annals, but not in Russia. And the Russians tend to be, I don't know how to put it. They know the history, and they're aware of some of these older studies done in Russia. Some of them not even translated into English. That started only about 50 years ago. They have their ears to the ground. And so Andre was right. After all, he was not on a drug. I can't attest that he wasn't on drugs, but I don't think so. And it changed my life because there's so many things that, because it seems to be true. I mean, there's lots of evidence, and I've seen no evidence against. So what do you do? If you connect yourself electrically to the negative earth, it creates an opportunity for electrons, this vast supply of electrons, to enter your body, create easy water, because negative charge electrons imparted into water, as we done in the lab, build easy water. See, so that's why when you walk along the seashore without shoes or socks, you may feel good because your cells, all of your cells, essentially get filled up with negative charge. It's like sticking an electrode in and imparting negative charge into your body, and it seems to work. So now it's called earthing or grounding, and many people have come to realize it, and it's become a commercial enterprise. And I think it's possible that the reason for it is as simple as I've suggested. Negative charge seeps into your body. You can do the same by burying yourself in the sand, or going into a mud bath, or
swim in the sea. Yeah.
Swim in the sea, exactly. Or commercially, you can buy an aluminum plate. Don't wear socks. Put your feet on the aluminum plate, and the plate should be connected to an iron rod that's driven all the way into the ground. So you're literally grounding yourself and subjecting yourself to all of the beneficial negative charge in the earth, which
it's amazing how you can. It's amazing how you can commercialize something like taking your shoes off.
I guess so. Yeah, I don't know how well they're doing commercially, but yeah. And there's a story of George Washington. He seemed to have been paranoid. Our first president, about his health, and he would, when he traveled, he always brought along his personal physician. And one day in California, he wasn't feeling well. He went to his physician and he said, "Hey, doc," or whatever language he used, "I'm not feeling well." And he explained his symptoms, and his doctor said, "Just hug a tree." And hug a tree? Well, it seems to have worked, because he was advised to do that all the time. And what does that do? Well, the tree, like us, the tree is filled with negative charge. And in fact, in the tree, the cells are even more negative in most plants, even more negative than we are. And so should contain a superabundance of easy water bearing that negative charge. And so if you hug the tree, that negative charge has an opportunity to seep into your body, uh, just like walking barefoot. And I don't know, maybe it worked. Uh,
But
so
you mentioned things like you mentioned Ayurveda earlier, and I studied that quite a bit before, and also metaphysics. And it seems to me sometimes that science is studying, perhaps, how would you put it, the signature of the energy rather than the energy of itself. You know, when they study DNA, or in this case, easy water. In in Eastern language, water is prana,
yeah.
so that's the energy. And I'm sure you know this from your studies. But do you, is that more logical that, you know, you when you're taking in prana, and the sun is charging the water with prana, and you hug a tree, and there's a spiritual exchange, or as you being trained as an engineer, do you have any opening for that angle?
I do have an opening. I didn't have an opening 10 years ago or more, but I certainly have an opening now uh, because I've seen the evidence. We organize each year the annual conference on the physics, chemistry, and biology of water this October in Germany. This is the 15th edition, and each year there are two or three people who sometimes more reporting on the energy coming in somehow from the environment and creating actually information in the water or memory of the water. The earliest one was, or one of the earliest ones was the late Jacques Benveniste,
I remember the
who's
Nobel Prize winner.
no, he was an Ig Nobel Prize winner, not Nobel Prize winner.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
you know the Ig Nobel Prize? It's the
No.
inverse of a Nobel Prize. uh, it's a sort of scientific joke if you win.
Oh,
If you
okay.
happen to win one of those Ig Nobel prizes, um, you're you're anointed for life. And he was anointed with an Ig Nobel Prize, maybe even two of them. um, and the reason is he had experiments that demonstrated that water could retain memory. The experiments he did, they were dilution experiments. He takes some substance, just like the homeopaths do, and he diluted and diluted and diluted and diluted until, statistically speaking, there was nothing left of the original molecule, only water. And that water had the same properties as the original solution that contained the water plus uh, some substance. And he tried to publish that in Nature, and the editor, Sir John Maddox, all of this that I'm telling you, by the way, is written in several books. Uh, uh, Maddox said that no way that you can be right, because if you're right, everybody else is wrong. And therefore, I will refuse to send it to reviewers of Nature. He was the editor in chief of Nature. Um, and so Jacques, being not only a competent, more than competent scientist, his work is in every microbiology textbook. He knew he was right because the experiment could be repeated, and it didn't work every time, but almost every time, easily statistically significant. Um, so he decided to ask colleagues from around the world to repeat his experiment, and they got the same result, and they attempted again to publish in the journal Nature collectively as a group. And the response came back, I don't care how many people appear to have confirmed this, it's got to be wrong, because uh, otherwise everybody else is wrong. You're right, everybody else is wrong, and it can't be that everybody else is wrong. Um, so that's where I think that's where the idea of water memory began, or information in water. And it would be easy at the time to dismiss this, especially being a kind of um, engineer type, which I was, nuts and bolts engineer. However, I came to realize eventually that those people may have been right in their criticism to some extent, because water, liquid water as we know it, the molecules are randomly oriented, and they're bouncing around a furious number of times each second, or each femtosecond. How is it possible that such a mix of molecules bouncing around that way could ever store information? And so their skepticism was justified. However, it's not true of easy water. Easy water is like a crystal. It's like a liquid crystal. And the atoms of oxygen and hydrogen in that hexagonal crystal, they're all organized and they don't bounce around the same way as in liquid water. And that's also why easy water tends to be sort of viscous like honey, because the molecules are stuck together in this way. They're not freely moving, creating a liquid. And so while a decade or a decade and a half ago, I might not have been open to the idea of subtle energies, information, whatever being imparted. I now think that that's quite possible, or even likely, because first of all, it's not being stored in ordinary H2O. It's being stored in easy water, I believe. And easy water is like a crystal, and crystals store energy, just like the silicon crystal.
And information.
Information, right? Stores information. Yeah, and so. And also, not only does it have the capacity to do so, a huge capacity for information storage because those atoms are packed so closely together, but also each oxygen has the capacity to have not two states, like for example, silicon transistors, which make up today's computer memories. You have two states, 0, 1, but also these oxygens have 5 different oxidation states. So in theory, each entity in a 3-dimensional array of negative charges in easy water, or of oxygens, I should say, each one of those oxygen atoms has the capacity to have 5 different states, not 2 different states. So you can imagine how the information in this tightly packed array, each element of which has 3 states instead of 5 states instead of 2 states. It's amazing what the capacity is, and so we're excited about the possibility that one day your computer, instead of having a thumb drive that consists of silicon, crystal of silicon, it may have crystal of easy water that's stuck in it, which has a dramatically higher capacity for energy storage.
To do the battery as well, yeah.
And do the battery as well. Right. Well,
that's what we are, yeah.
Yeah,
collections of water held together through
indeed,
mind.
we are collections of water, and I didn't use the word arrogant before, but for a scientist to think that 99% of the molecules in our body don't do anything, I think some would say that it borders on arrogant to take that position.
That's great. You're like a gateway scientist, like the stepping stone that brings other scientists out of this. I also spoke to Rupert Sheldrake, and he had his morphic resonance theory, and these kind of just bring in science this towards the Eastern ideas. Just converting the language is very helpful, I think.
Yeah, I guess it might say that I'm following in the footsteps of Rupert Sheldrake, who didn't start that way, but gradually, after spent some time in India and understanding the Ayurvedic tradition, became aware of the power of it. It's really a pity that so many of us have lost it, because 5,000 years ago, the people were as interested as we are in preserving their health. It's not that they never thought about it. And you can imagine that, they developed their techniques of how to do it. And they were, I'm sure, just as confident their techniques, as the pharmaceutical companies today seem to be, I guess, confident of their techniques. And
Maybe even more so. Maybe I think they had better results, but that's a whole other conversation. But I have to work on a
right.
song. I have to work on a song about water now, so I think I'm fully inspired. I'm fully hydrated. So
Okay. Oh, that's great. Okay, so I guess I will wish you good luck on your song. It's been a real delight to talk with you, and I'd love to hear the song after it's done. I hope you have enough information to to create it.
definitely.
I've heard some of your others. It's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jared. Well, this is I've
Okay.
got the book, so I'm gonna keep digesting it all, and I'll see what I'll sweat out a song.
Thank you so much. Okay. Anyway, you're. I guess we've ended.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for you're great. Are you in Sydney? I can't remember. Where are you located?
I'm actually in Italy. I'm in Italy.
Oh my goodness! Why did I
Yeah.
think Australia? I apologize.
No,
Okay.
no, you're talking to people all around the world, so
Yeah,
it must be very
I
difficult to
understand
keep
that.
track of things.
But your English sounds as though it comes from Australia. Why is that?
That's a big insult, but
I apologize.
but a lot of Americans make that mistake. It's I don't know what it is, but I've lived abroad for a long time, so maybe my accent's changed from the. I'm originally from England, yeah.
Okay, well, I apologize.
But I have traveled extensively, so
yeah,
I've diluted.
An international. That's why I said Bondi Beach, because it's near Sydney. I thought, oh yeah, well he knows about that.
Yeah, I have actually been there. It's a beautiful place, but
it is beautiful. Yeah,
not as nice as Italy.
Yeah. Anyway, Jack, it's been great, and we end just at the right time because I have to get out there soon.
In the water, I am reborn with easy water, no structures torn. With the water and with the sun, this easy water keeps me young. My mitochondria rebuilding cells, my power swells. Without the water, my life is stopped. But with easy water, I am recharged. With the water and with the sun, this easy water keeps me young.
Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show and the song. If you want to hear the song again, it's available on all music streaming services or for a $1 download from Podsongs.com. You can also subscribe there for our newsletter, for all other news and updates. A big thanks to our musical production team here in Italy, Maurizio Sanecola, Massimino Vozza, and Luigi Falcione, and my researcher, Dori Verbo. Please help us by sending this episode to your friends, sharing it on social media, and reviewing it wherever you can. I also have another show to listen to. It's called The Mystic Cast, and it's about spirituality, UFOs, mysticism, the occult, and the Etheria Society, the teachings of which led me to start this project, serving the servers, helping those who help others. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great day.